What's up, everyone? It may be Tuesday morning, but we have a fun conversation, potentially just unpacking really the home of the future, Boxable. You may have seen it. I know we've heard a lot about it here in California after the Pacific Palisades fires and just finding, affordable housing and things that just make sense. And Boxable is one of those companies which makes sense. So we're going to talk to the one of the co-founders, Gio- Galiano. Um, just getting Galiano today, and I couldn't be more excited to have Galiano here today with us. Stephen, why don't you just give us a quick intro of yourself, and we'll invite him up.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. We have a privilege of having Galiano Tiramani, another Italian with another difficult name to pronounce here today. But for myself, Stephen Pallotta, not too difficult of an Italian name there, Director of Business Development for Tesla Silicon Valley. And Boxable is one of our amazing partners that we have with Tesla Silicon Valley. And I actually got the privilege to go out to Boxable's headquarters in Nevada last January. And I went out there for CES, and I was pretty impressed by CES, but I was blown away by Boxable. So again, super happy to have this conversation with Galiano, go into a deep dive, a little bit about himself, some professional history, and then of course diving deep into Boxable. Well, with that said, Galiano, welcome.
Hey guys, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming and joining us this Tuesday morning.
All right.
Yeah, man. So
yeah,
so we're in Las Vegas, where we are trying to mass produce housing in a factory in an effort to make housing more affordable. So we believe that the key to fixing housing is build more, build it faster, build it at a lower cost. And we think that the old way of doing that, where they build buildings using hand tools one at a time on site, it's just not going to work. We've got to put it onto the assembly line the same way we build every other modern product. The Tesla factories, they'll put out one car every minute off of those factories. So why aren't we doing that with houses? All the technology exists.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I'll just introduce you so thank you for giving us a quick breakdown. But thank you for, first of all, for coming and giving us your time today. Obviously, you are one of the co-founders of Boxable, and we know that Boxable is really just transforming the housing industry. Again, I use cases like the Pacific Palisades, really just getting things affordable and up quick. These are factory-built homes that are affordable, efficient, and quick to set up. The flagship product is the Casita, which delivers a complete home on a truck that can be assembled in just hours, which is crazy, combining smart design and advanced materials to tackle the global housing challenge. So, when the Palisades went down, and that whole situation was really unfortunate, and then just goes to show the inefficiencies here in California, the first thing I thought of was Boxable and just being able to set up a bunch of homes again within hours. But I'll pass it to Steven, just to kick us off here.
Yeah, just before we hop into Boxable, would love to learn a little bit more about you, Galiano, kind of your professional history, how you ended up really getting to Boxable, just some of your background and maybe what led up to this point today.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of an entrepreneur. I've been hopping from project to project. Some of the more successful ones was before Boxable, I was actually living in Northern California doing a marijuana business. And then before that, I had a Bitcoin exchange business. So that was in like 2013 or so, got in on that. And at a certain point, I was talking to my dad, Paolo, one day, and he had this idea about 20 years before that to actually fold up the house. So, obviously houses are big and they don't fit on the road. The road's small. So his idea was fold up the house, because most buildings are empty space. So you fold up all that empty space and now it can fit on the road. So that is what really enables the mass production, because then you can have one big centralized factory where you're building these rooms, and then you can actually ship them cost effectively to site. And so my father's kind of an inventor, industrial engineer. So he had drawn up this way to fold up a house. And then I just said, hey, you want to give it a shot, making this into a company? He said, yeah, let's try. So we made the websites, made a bunch of 3D renders, started showing it to people, got more and more traction. And now here we are in 2025 with 400,000 square feet of warehouse manufacturing space, hundreds of houses built, and things are moving along nicely.
Tell me a little bit about, I mean, you have an awesome background, just, but obviously completely different than just building homes like you are today. What were some of those experiences that you took from those startups that you had, whether it was the marijuana business or crypto, that kind of helped you today in what you're doing at Boxable?
Oh yeah, I think everything that happened yesterday is just kind of training camp for what's next. But with being an entrepreneur and starting businesses, I just found myself coming across an angle where I thought, you know what, I can make that work, and then diving in, becoming obsessed with it, learning everything about it, and then working harder and trying to put out a better service to outcompete others.
Yeah. Well, we'll get into Boxable a little bit more, but kind of one last more personal question about kind of your role with Boxable, especially as you mentioned your father, you work with him hand in hand. As an Italian, even I don't know, changing a tire with an Italian father can be such a crazy situation. What's it like working with Paolo? What's it like working with your father, and not just working alongside him, but actually building an incredible company?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have very complementary skill sets. He's more on the design engineering side. I'm more on the sales, marketing, business development side. So we make a great team, and definitely have, being able to pull off something pretty amazing together to come this far.
Yeah, no, it can be a blessing and a blessing in disguise, just being able to work for family. But what inspired you to what inspired you to take the challenge of like reimagining housing at scale? Like obviously it seems like, you guys had that discussion of like folding a house and doing all that stuff, but like why take this on versus like maybe some other challenges or other problems that you wanted to solve during those days when you were looking for what's next?
I think one of the big things was the size of the opportunity was so massive. I couldn't really come up with anything bigger. And if you're going to dive into a business or a market, make it a big one, because then you're going to have more interest, more opportunities, more money to solve the problem, et cetera. And housing is a $1 trillion industry all around the world. It's really very old school and backwards the way it's done. There's tons of problems that can be solved to make it better. So it just seemed like a huge opportunity.
Yeah, and you mentioned right at the beginning of the podcast the kind of like it sounds like the pure motivator behind Boxable is addressing affordable housing, and really at this point it just seems like the housing market in general, it's so difficult to just get into a normal house. But what else was there any other motivation behind actually getting Boxable off the ground, getting it started?
I think we just saw this huge gap in like the need. You've got statistics like 5,000 or 5 million housing unit shortage in this country. So in theory, if you can build them, they're going to sell, and you can scale that up really big. But we started out with our first product. That's the Casita. So it's a small little studio house, 360 square foot, finished in the factory, kitchen, bathroom, flooring, windows, electric, plumbing, all that's done in the factory, and then it sets up quickly on site. But now we're moving on to other types of buildings as well. So, larger single family buildings, multi-family apartments, basically trying to hit the whole residential building market with our solution.
Just a quick follow-up, and we'll get more into Casita later, but I was doing some research into robotaxi when it first came out, just kind of like thinking about this forward-looking company like Boxable, forward-looking company like Tesla, and so many people were kind of shooting down the robotaxi like, wow, it has 2 seats, great. But when you look into the statistics and you go, okay, well, I don't want to get this wrong, but let's say it's like 80% of rides are single passenger rides, right? And then 95% of rides are 2 passenger rides. I'm going to assume there's probably some research that went on as well, saying what makes the most sense for the right Boxable size, and that's probably something you guys have checked out for Casita being your main and kind of flagship product today.
Oh yeah. So the first thing we built was not actually the Casita. It was a bigger, like a 1,400 square foot house. And then we were trying to think about where do we start with this? We can't just do everything at once. So we noticed what was happening in California, where the backyard units, the accessory dwelling units, are really becoming increasingly popular. I believe that they accounted for about 20% of new construction last year. So we were like, you know what, let's start with the small box size and put that out there. And it ended up being a really good decision because so many people got pumped up and excited about it, because I think they kind of like the tiny house thing. I don't think we would have had as much popularity if we were just doing regular single families. So that turned out to be a really good choice to get our foot in the door.
Yeah, I mean, especially here in California where housing's so expensive, being able to, like, I think people can wrap their minds around putting in, an ADU or really a boxable inside their house versus potentially standing up a brand new one altogether. Especially too when you think of the rental income. I mean, especially if it costs, if you add the unit, because I've actually done some estimates on like what it would look like to put a boxable in my backyard. And when you think of like what you can get for rental, I mean, you're going to be positive out the door. And it's just like whether it's setting it up as an office or setting it up as something that you are going to be renting out, or, again, maybe it's the in-law unit, whatever it may be. But it really is like affordable and easy, especially at least for my circumstance, it would have to be like craned in, right? Versus like putting on the side. But it really is just overall just a great concept.
Yeah.
Um,
The big motivator for those backyard ADUs is often the rental income. So I think you can come out
100%.
ahead right away. Like the cost to finance the Boxable versus the amount you would rent it for, it actually looks like a really good kind of real estate investment for people.
Yeah, especially here in the Bay Area where land is so expensive, just being able to like, you don't have to expand your land or buy more land. Typically, it's just something you can put in the back if there's enough space and then instant income. So, but what would you say for yourself? Like, obviously now you're designing homes, you're kind of thinking of like maybe what the future of housing looks like, whether it's kind of ADUs and then potentially, different products in the future. What are your personal experiences that have you kind of used for, the products that you make today for Boxable and really of the future?
We went through a really big learning curve throughout all of this. And it was like really, it was a wild ride. I mean, so much crazy stuff has happened. We've come so far so quickly. We've scaled up into this big operation, done tons of R&D, kind of became experts on everything surrounding this. So I think we're in a really good position now. We have a whole bunch of new products we're rolling out, new technology, ways to build the houses faster and cheaper, and plans to scale up. So it's really a big chess game right now.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and hop into kind of more of the specifics on Boxable, on Casita, and starting off with really, can you just explain? Like I said, I had the privilege of actually going out to your factory, checking out the different Casita, designs that you have. Some of those kind of cool, what do you call it? Just themed units was very impressive. But
Yeah.
just the actual factory itself, if you can go into the concept of foldable factory built homes and why this approach is critical for affordable housing.
Yeah. So making it work on an assembly line at scale is the key to bringing down the cost, because if you look at the way labor is part of the cost of producing something, when you build it on an assembly line versus building it in a custom manner on site, it's like a no-brainer, because you're separating the tasks down with specific employees who are trained to do this repetitive task over and over. So like, imagine, you have this assembly line and the house is moving past the employee, let's say every 1 minute in my dreams. And the employees just going in and they're just putting these 3 screws in and putting these 3 screws and over, compared to doing that on site where you have a highly paid and skilled, carpenter doing custom work, walking around, planning stuff out, picking up, changing tools. What the assembly line does is it just rips like labor out of the equation, like hours and hours and hours of labor. And I think where we can go with our labor cost per unit, it's like next to nothing when the labor component to build on site is just massive. Imagine if you went to order a car and some guys showed up with a bunch of sheet metal and hammers and welding torches and parts in your driveway and started assembling it together in your driveway. That would be really slow, really expensive, and really poor quality. But that's what they do with houses. So we think we've solved the various problems to make it work in the factory on the assembly line, and we'll continue to prove that out to the market and get more and more traction and scale in an effort to push down those labor costs dramatically.
Yeah, one thing that you brought up that I haven't even considered literally until right now is just the predictable nature of quality control that goes into a Boxable home, right? Or to something similar to, at least to Boxable. You've seen these videos on TikTok and X where this guy goes out to these homes, and I don't know if it's like Arizona or Florida, wherever it is, and he does these inspections and he shows all these massive issues with the homes versus you have this perfect assembly line structure where this screw goes here, this screw goes here. Everything is just right. The materials are consistent because they're being created in a factory as well, versus timber that might be coming from some crap field where they're just, using, I don't know if they're using growth hormones in trees, whatever they're using these days, but everything about your product is consistent. And that also provides long-term just a lot of, like reassurance or credibility in the product as well. I think it's really important.
Oh yeah. It's a no-brainer that the quality control is going to be on a different planet. The way houses are built, it's just like nothing's accurate, nothing's precise. You're using all these different subcontractors. People are cutting corners left and right. None of that can happen in the factory. It just can't. The whole thing won't work. It's got to all be perfect. We're using CNC cutting tools that are precise to like a millimeter, versus a guy with a handsaw and a power drill out in the field. And that's not even just about quality. That's like speed too, because it's going to be so much slower if you're doing it in a poor quality, inefficient manner.
Yeah. One last follow up, and then John, I know you have a question that you wanted to ask, but the other thing I was thinking about too is in a factory you also have climate control. You have a lot of control in a factory, kind of like a paint shop, right? There's so much stuff that has to be controlled and damage mitigation, or I don't know if that's the right way of phrasing it, but just even the concept of having a climate controlled environment for the workers putting this together versus 120 degrees out in the sun or rain or snow.
Yeah, it rains on the open framing of a house. You don't think that house is going to be riddled with mold for the next 20 years? Like, it's no good. Yeah, the climate control, and then even like in Vegas, it is 120 degrees. You can't even, how much efficiency you're going to get out of your workers when they're barely alive and they're profusely sweating and like chugging gallons of water because it's so hot. It's just not feasible.
Yeah, when you think of, I think, because like when you think of how to build a house and all of the concepts, I think what's like the most important thing to tackle into? Is it just like creating something that is foldable, that is super easy? Like when you think, because like when I think of like a Tesla and how they tackled things, right? And how they built their efficiencies, what would that equivalent be when it comes to like potentially like building a scalable, affordable house?
So the folding aspect is like the first thing, because we needed a solution to ship. Without that, nothing works, because you have factory built housing that's been around for a long time. a huge list of failed companies, the ones that are out there doing it, pretty small market share, and they ship these wide loads. And it's incredibly expensive because when you ship a wide load on the highway, you don't just need the truck driving the load. You also need another, you've probably seen it before. You need another car with flags on it. So it's like a follow car. So how much is it going to cost when all of a sudden you need 2 vehicles and 2 drivers instead of the regular truck just driving the load? So the only way we could ship a big enough radius from our factory was to fix shipping. And if we can ship a big enough radius from our factory, that allows mass production. And without mass production, you're just building inside. You may get a little efficiency here and there, but even what we're doing right now in Vegas is not mass production. Like let's say we're building a few houses a day. Like I said before, we need to be doing it 1 every minute. That's where we'll really crush the numbers. And if we're building 1 house a minute, we got to be able to ship those all around the country to have enough, market size and projects to absorb it all. And then that's the other side of the problem as well. Like right now, we could build a lot of houses, but we got to plan out where they're going to go. And with a product like this, it's not a widget that I can put in a FedEx envelope when someone buys it and mail it to their house. There's a lot of planning and preparation and time and money that goes into getting a house ready. Even just the process of getting permits approved by the building department takes, a lot of time. So building up that side of the business with the sales pipeline to be able to take all the houses is a pretty big challenge.
Yeah. One quick follow-up. When you think of like customers that, because I love how you guys identified like the most expensive or excruciating part of, building, let's say, mass scale homes. It's the shipping, which makes complete sense. So it's awesome that you guys, and that's, making it thinner and foldable and just easy to set up it makes a complete sense. When you talk to customers who've installed it, what is the biggest like point of feedback that they give you about how, owning a Boxable has changed home ownership?
I mean, for the builders and developers, they're just cutting out like huge portion of their headache and they're doing projects faster. So if you regular construction, you have all these subcontractors, the framer, the sheetrock guy, the painter, the electrician, the plumber, like all these different guys you got to hire and manage for months and months and months. And now with Boxable, all that's gone. All you have to worry about is getting your land and dropping them in, installing them. It totally changes the game for a real estate developer. And guess what? If you can do, 3 projects per year instead of 1, and you can charge half on your profit margin and still make more money, brings the prices down.
Yeah, if we could take a little bit deeper of a dive into the Casita itself, that is your flagship product as of today. I know you mentioned you have some other products coming out as well, and there are some other items you have today for the market as well. But if we could just dive into actually helping just paint a picture of what the Casita is. It's not just a box, it's not just a shed. It is a full-on everything house ready to go delivered to you. If you could just help paint that picture for anyone listening.
Yeah. So the way I think of it is kind of like an architecturally neutral, universal building box, where this is a house built to residential building code, exceeding all the requirements for insulation and structural strength and hurricane wind ratings and earthquake and all that. Everything's done, windows, flooring, electrical, plumbing, lighting, fully painted, ready to go. Then the whole thing folds up, but the kitchen and bathroom are still in there. So like all the space next to the kitchen and bathroom, that all folds up. It folds from 19 feet down to 8.5 feet. So it can fit on the road, just like a regular legal load. Then on site, they prepare utilities ready to connect and some type of foundation. They drop the box down on that, unfold it, bolt it down, and you're good to go with this little house. And then we also are doing now some other models. So the other models are basically just 2 or 3 of those square boxes connected together. So, that first one I described is like a little studio apartment. And then you could just take another box that has 2 bedrooms, stick it on the side, and now you have a 2-bedroom house.
So you mentioned that, right, there's plumbing, there's electrical. What else as far as hardware comes with a house, as far as fridge, dishwasher?
Oh yeah, all the appliances are all in there. Heating, cooling, toilet, sink, shower, everything you need. It's all good to go.
So really all you're doing is you're buying yourself a bed, a mattress, couch. It's about all you need at that point.
Yeah, we could stick those in the box too, probably. Okay. But yeah, and then, people buy their own.
Are there any accessories that you could buy from Boxable, or is it kind of like a Henry Ford, like one size fits all, and then you do your customizations after?
No, it's with this product, it's just standard. We're making this one thing, getting really good at making it, and down the line we'll add on a bunch of upgrades and stuff as well. Just similar to like if you go on the Tesla website and check out, there's some upgrades you can click through. We'll have that eventually.
Cool.
Can you just tell us a little bit about like the technologies and materials that make the Casita unique?
Yeah. So right now we're using laminated panels for the walls. So we decided against doing lumber framing because that wasn't a product that we thought was a fit for the factory. There's kind of pros and cons to everything, but when you're trying to be precise in a factory and use automation, you can't never buy a stick of lumber that's the same shape. You've all seen a pile of 2x4s. They're all a little bit out of whack. So that makes it a little more difficult. And, we wanted to simplify it. So we have this laminated panel where you have these skins laminated to EPS foam. That gives us less components. Everything is cut precisely and assembled together in the factory.
Okay, so we have a good idea of Casita. We have a good idea of what you're getting, kind of the whole part of it. The thing we haven't talked about yet, and now at this point you're thinking, okay, like I'm buying a house. Like houses are expensive. We're talking about affordable, but what's affordable? So Galiano, what is the cost of Casita?
So for the Casita, just the box, we charge $60,000 for that. I don't think really you can do it for any less, with site building or even the speed, of course, is valuable as well. So yeah, $60,000 for the product we make, and then depending where it's going, other costs to install it, depending on the project or what you're doing with the land.
And when you say just the box, it's not just the box, but you do quite literally mean like the whole thing, the kitchen, the sink, literally, the bathroom, the shower, you have a 2-in-1, what's it called? Like a washer dryer unit in there as well. Like everything you need to have a fully functioning, great place to live, it's all there.
Yep. Good to go.
Yeah. And the one thing that's interesting, right, is, like our parents' generations, right? They love to tinker, get into their cars, just play around with the engines, modify it, right? But I think this next generation, even like whether it's millennials or the generation after, they just want something that works. They want it just to show up. It's done. That's one of the big reasons why people love their Teslas. It just works, right? They don't have to worry about all the maintenance. They don't have to worry about an oil change or every 30, 60, 90,000. They have to go and spend all this money and being ripped off by, potentially a mechanic, right? And so I think that's one of the things I love about this. It's just, here's the products. Here's, you guys simplify it. You get it shipped out. Obviously, you have to figure out install costs and things like that, and that could vary depending on where you are. But it's just, it works, right? And it has everything in it. So it's not like you need to go, hey, go find the paint colors, or you can of course do that if you want to do that. But it's like, it just comes standard, and it's pretty much like a handoff, right?
Yeah. And we'll also handle everything for the customer, like for any project, big or small. If you came to us and said, hey, I want to build, a 50 house community on this land that I'm going to buy, we would say great, and we'd take care of everything from the permitting and the site plan and install and everything that needs to get done to make it come true.
So you mentioned, so it's 60,000, all, everything you need. There are some other costs as far as the actual land itself and whatever's kind of needed to get things connected to the house. But as far as financing or something along those lines, is that something that Boxable also offers?
Yeah, we have some loan brokers that have access to like hundreds of different loan programs. So depending on what the customer needs, we can plug them in, and that's all part of the process. And so a customer would come in through our website, and once we qualify them and make sure they can do it, we'll get them to the loan person who can pick out a loan program for them.
Yeah, so realistically, you're probably spending less if you're financing the Boxable, the Casita. You're probably spending less on the financing than you would be on a nice apartment somewhere. It's very likely.
Yeah, and I think with most of the loan programs, you can get in with, really no down payment as well. So you just kind of start with the monthly payment.
What would you like? So here in the Bay Area, right? It's just like super expensive to really do anything. I mean, honestly, it's just kind of but it's also partially the market and the people that work here and the value and the market value that, has been created in this area. But, people that are considering, like, let's say building an ADU ground up versus putting in a Boxable, what are the biggest changes? One, obviously I know is time. How much time you save doing a Boxable, but like, what are some other big differentiators out there?
I think time. I think you come in at a lower price. You have more certainty. I think if you go with a regular builder, it's pretty much guaranteed that it's going to be a bait and switch. Like they're going to come in with this low ball price, and then eventually they're going to say, "Oh, the framer, the quote came in more. Oh, the lumber price went up, or whatever." You're definitely going to end up paying more. And even just dealing with a brand that has its reputation on the line, because if you look at the market of who's building these ADUs, there's really no big company doing it. There's us, there's a few others trying, but like when I look at permit applications for ADUs, there's nobody out there doing like more than 10 or 5 or 2 for the last year. So it's all just small guys doing it. So when you're dealing with a contractor like that, I think it's a little bit risky for a homeowner to get on the hook with someone who doesn't necessarily have a huge long track record.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever been a construction job, big or small, throughout all of history that's been on budget. Like if you're told it's 60,000, it's probably going to be 100-something thousand.
Yeah.
But with you guys,
with us, we're setting the price on most of that stuff before
right,
it ever leaves our factory, so they know that they're locked in.
As far as integrations also with the house, like we said, all the appliances are included: your dishwasher, your washer dryer, your full-size refrigerator. And I heard something from Paolo recently even that you guys might even be working on your own appliances. Can you talk a little bit about potential future products within the product itself?
Yeah, we definitely want to vertically integrate with everything we can, whether it's the products that are in our house, or the company that does our permits for us, or our site plans. The long-term plan for Boxable is to absorb all of those different functions so that we can just have this beast that kind of does it all, and it's streamlined and efficient and lower cost. So it's a really big vision that we have. And even at the scale the company is now, this is tiny compared to where we have to be to actually solve the problem.
Yeah, no, it's I mean, like I said, I think you guys are, and also too, it's interesting because like when you think of like Tesla, they were like, hey, we need to go and make the most expensive, a luxury car, which was the Roadster and the Model S, and then they worked their way down. I think it's interesting how even in this model, it's like, especially again here in the Bay Area, people, or even California, right? When you think of like 100, 200K, that's a lot easier to deal with. And it's been interesting how that has kind of been the big entry point for you guys. But whether it's all of these kind of like deployed communities or pilot programs, can you share more about about kind of like how has that looked, whether it's been, new communities that you guys have stood up, maybe some pilots, but what has been like, potentially, what does the future even look like for potential expansions?
Yeah, we have the first big order we got was military contract. So we got that order when we had basically nothing, no factory, no employees. It was an order for 160 houses. So we took that and ran with it and made it happen. And then we went on to a workforce housing for a copper mine. We've done a bunch of individual ADUs all over the place. We have a nice project with about 12 units in Oklahoma that's got two stories, so it's the casitas stacked on top of each other. Recently, we signed a deal with a glamping company, so like kind of a resort kind of vacation place. Just a huge range of different projects all over, and we're definitely focused on ramping up sales right now. So we're locking them in. That's the name of the game. We've spent a lot of time doing R&D and regulatory approvals, and now we're pushing hard on selling so we can ramp up production behind that.
Yeah, and I noticed, by the way, out in the factory in Nevada, which anyone, I believe it still applies, anyone can come out and actually get a tour of the facility there.
Yes.
Okay, so one of the things, and I can't remember his name, but he did a great job of giving the tour on the golf cart. But he was pointing out that you guys are also working on a lot of innovative materials as well. If you could kind of talk about that and just also how you're ensuring that safety is built in from the ground level, that there's a ton of durability, and that everything obviously is code compliant as well.
Oh yeah, we're constantly trying to innovate on the materials we use and the manufacturing methods and refining the product. We have been producing the house mostly with the same stuff kind of since we started, and we've learned a lot, and that's all going into what we're calling phase 2, where we kind of have a new way to build the house that we think is going to bring costs down quite a bit, increase the fire ratings, the structural strength, allow for more customizability, allow us to roll out those bigger models, do like multifamily stuff. So we're excited to get rolling on that. I think the numbers are going to be killer once we're launched with that new method for building.
Another just thing too, just I wish everyone can come over to your factory and check it out and see what you guys are doing. But something else that's another big perk to a Boxable is there's pretty much a 0% possibility of having any termite issues, right? There's really no wood in the product as well.
Yeah, we don't use mold in this version or the next version that we're planning. Don't love the wood. Lots of drawbacks there. So I think we're focused on creating this one product that's can be standardized and mass produced in our factory, but also be deployed in all these different climates around the country. So you have different requirements if you're in like California versus Florida, where you need high wind ratings. But our one product has to meet and exceed all those different requirements so that we're not producing different stuff for different areas. So that means, we've really pushed the envelope on meeting all this stuff like energy efficiency and things like that.
Yeah, when you when you think of, and it's interesting that you brought that up. So again, I can't, off the top of my head, think of every market that you guys are like wanting to get into, which sounds like probably every state would be in a perfect world. But when you consider things like Florida, Texas, Arizona, the heat, well, obviously
Oklahoma with
you're,
tornadoes.
yeah, exactly. Like how do you guys bake in like long-term performance, or and maybe this is more of a broad question, but like, someone who is going to build something up like from the ground up versus putting a Boxable, how should people be concerned about like longevity, when they consider something that was built with, let's say, wood and a bunch of subcontractors versus something that kind of is just like dropped in and, you know, ready to go?
Yeah, I think we're gonna beat them out. And you know, the proof for that would be in the test data and the engineering reports, because you know what we're building is going to exceed the requirements in all that kind of stuff. And then on top of that, you just have the quality control of the factory where things are more precise. And you know, we're putting a lot of effort and thought into the engineering of this, much more than a regular house would just be built kind of a little bit more custom manner. You know, this is something where we're doing it over and over and over again. And any small thing that needs to get tweaked to make it better will get tweaked as that product gets more and more proof, you know, life out in the field for real.
Yep. So just as we're somewhat beginning to start to wrap up here, I want to talk a little bit about other products that you have available. We talked about Casita, which, by the way, again, just a reminder, it's a roughly a studio size apartment. Do you got any off the top of your head square footage on that?
361 square foot studio apartment. Yep.
Okay. And which, by the way, it might sound small, but it is like deceivingly large. You have 9-foot something ceilings, is it?
Yep.
Right,
Yep.
9-foot ceilings. It's just feels expansive. It does not feel, and I'm not just saying that. It truly, Joe Jefferson from
nice.
San Joaquin Valley was with me, and he's like, "This feels huge. This feels massive." But besides Casita, what else do you have available today, and what are some other products that are on the roadmap?
We have a bunch of different stuff we're working on. The ones that we've announced so far is one of them is called Baby. So it's basically it's an even smaller house that's on wheels. Technically, it's classified as an RV, which means that the barrier to entry is so low, the cost on it is really low. The ease to set it up, plug it in, like this thing will arrive, you know, park. You plug it in with an extension cord and a hose, and then you're good to go. You have a place to live. So that was our whack at making the kind of lowest barrier entry housing conceivable. And again, it's really small, but the use of space is really nice. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of use cases for that. We ended up engineering these special panels to make that product, and then we realized there was also demand for little panelized wall kits. So we have that panelized wall kit system as well. That should be launching soon. I think, you know, a lot of people are going to love those. They're just little lightweight panels. You lift them up and you click them all together, and you have a little mini shelter.
Yeah. On Baby Box, by the way, when I was out there again, it was last January. I got to come out soon again, just see what else is going on at the factory. But Joe Jefferson, Paolo, and myself, we're all in the Baby Box, and while it's smaller certainly than Casita, it still didn't feel cramped. And one of the coolest things, in my opinion, was the couch. And it sounds so silly, but Paolo was saying, is like, oh, we designed this couch, and it's a couch. It's a nice size couch. It's, you know, nice wide cushions, like you don't feel like you're falling off the edge of it. But it's actually something you guys designed specifically for Baby Box, and just the innovations that are coming out of this are amazing.
Oh yeah, tons of stuff. Yeah, the couch Paolo made, that I think is pretty sweet. It's just like instantly folds from a bed into a couch.
Yep.
So, you know, I think I love the story that, you know, the stories that we've been sharing about just like kind of like your journey, and then also too like how you guys have tackled and entered the market. When you think of people that, you know, are either like well off, you would think that like, hey, let me buy the most expensive house, build something ground up, versus kind of being more like minimalist. What is I don't want to share the full story or all the details, but you know, I know Elon has obviously had experience with Boxable. Would you want to talk a little bit about that and what your interactions have been with his experience?
Yeah, I mean, I usually say no comment, but I'll just repeat what he's said in some interviews, where he actually has a casita down in SpaceX, Texas. in the backyard of his house over there. He said he used it as a guest house. So that was pretty cool to get him as. Actually, that was our first customer that we ever had.
Seriously, he bought the Casita?
Yeah, it was the first
That's
customer.
dude.
He saw it on Twitter.
Of course.
It's got to be reassuring when you're pretty much a startup and that's your first customer.
We weren't even a startup. It was just me and my dad in the garage.
Very
Yeah.
reassuring.
No, it's like I said, so I've been down to Starbase, which is actually an official city now.
Cool.
So shout out to that whole team. It's got a city limits. It's really small, but like that area is literally on the coast in a beach in the Gulf of what is it, America now, and Gulf of Mexico, whatever it was. It's like you need to be able to put as many houses in that area, and it's like, and then you actually see this whole StreamYard. There's whole Airstream.
Airstream, yeah.
All these houses there, and so it's like
Got a lot of cool stuff there.
yeah, exactly. And then just the weather and the dynamics of the things you deal with there. Like in the summer, you literally, if you have glasses, so it's not something you two have to worry about. But like when you walk out, it's like your glasses just steam up. So I
It's
can
crazy
imagine.
there.
Yeah, exactly.
My skin melted off my body when I was there. I swear to God, we were setting the house up, and my socks were like chafing on my leg, and I was like, "What is happening?" And literally my skin was like falling because it was so humid and wet and hot. We were just outside for like one day, and I got like destroyed by it.
Yeah. Well, either way, it's interesting, right? It's like, for him to even see stuff, right, that just kind of makes sense, very minimalistic, and he'll just, make moves on it versus being like, hey, let me just, build like, the most exotic thing, right? But yeah, so thanks for sharing that. A really cool story, especially, we have a huge Tesla community following us, but a lot of just Elon fans as well.
Yeah,
go ahead.
no, last question for me. Just something I want to know from you as co-founder, as building this company from the ground. 5 years, call it 10 years from now. I'm not going to confine you on this one, but 5 years, 10 years from now, what would you define the success of Boxable? Like not just valuation, not market cap, not stock market and all that stuff aside. But how would you personally define what the future of success looks like for Boxable?
Well, yeah, we want to be, one of the biggest home producers. We want to have the lowest cost way to build by a significant margin, and see how fast we can scale it there, and where it goes beyond that. And I also want to be building our own projects, so not selling boxes to people. I want to be buying land and building communities and then selling and leasing those. I think that's where the company has to go.
Yeah.
If we want to actually make that kind of scale work, we need a place to put 50,000 houses or whatever we would get out of a crazy factory. So it's all about just proving that we can do it cheaper at this scale, and then going back to the market and saying, all right, what happens if we go to the next level of scale? How much cheaper does it get? And then can this become like the default way, best way to build, where anyone who wants to build anything is like, I got to do it with Boxable because it's a pain in the ass to do it the old way.
Yeah, I could completely see that, where you have big, beautiful areas. First place that comes to mind is like something like Wyoming with nice large lakes and beautiful backgrounds. And you have this super affordable housing, and you're creating communities, you're creating potentially even, small cities of sorts, but a place where people can enjoy having their own home without having to go into crazy amounts of debt or just live outside their means.
100%. Especially, like I said, if we have a huge base. We have over 6,000 members here in the Bay, and across Northern California, 10,000 along with Joe's clubs as well. But like, I think it's definitely something, if you're living in California, this is definitely something you need to consider. It's something that just makes sense. They're already permitted here in California. It's really the site plans, all that stuff is just really easy and accessible. And they have authorized dealers or construction men that can literally just come out and give you quotes. It's really quick. All of that's like listed on their website. You just type in your zip code and it pops up. But it's definitely something, like I said, if you are in the Bay Area, you're looking to potentially add an ADU, this is, just put the numbers next to each other. Again, you're going to save a lot of time. You're going to save some cost. And this is not going to be something where a bunch of corners are going to be cut, as was mentioned. But first off, I just want to say, Galiano, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your time. Like I said, I think the product that you guys are making just makes sense. It's important, especially as we grow here, whether it's California and affordable housing, or whether it's like you having these natural disasters that happen that where you need solutions to act fast, right? This is the type of stuff that we need. So was there anything else that you wanted to, maybe any final thoughts or things that you wanted to share with the audience?
Yeah, thanks for having me. And if people are interested in learning more, head over to the website, boxable.com. Check us out on X, on YouTube, on Instagram. We just post constant updates about our journey so people can follow us along the way. And everyone's invited to Las Vegas to tour the factory.
Yeah, exactly. I know I was jealous when Steven and Joe went. I need to come out to Vegas soon and do that tour. But yeah, thank you again. Again, make sure to go to Boxable without the E. So Boxable without the E.com. So BOXABL .com. And then it's at BOXABL on all the social channels. So thank you again for your time today. And we look forward to the next conversation.
Great. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Galiano.